All right. So first things first, can you share with me what happened in your family that made you want to base the movie on the line on, what happened?
Yeah. So On the Line is based off of my personal experience dealing with a suicidal loved one. My brother suffers from depression and bipolar disorder, and so throughout, the majority of his life, he's kind of gone through these waves of battling depression, but it's gotten worse over the last 6 years. And so, basically over the last 6 years, I've had to deal with my brother attempting suicide multiple times or getting phone calls from my family that he's threatening it. So just, the residual trauma of getting those phone calls, having to see my brother, basically with, like a few breaths left, all of that type of trauma built up over time, just really made me feel like I needed to express this. Like I just kind of had to keep moving through the motions. I had to, go back to work when he was okay. And so I used the film as a vehicle to kind of deal with this trauma, but then also as a way to give other people that have gone through similar experiences kind of like a way to see themselves represented on screen.
So, what I would ask you, having done the film and having lived through this with your brother, are there certain things that you found out about Black mental health that, you didn't know before, different, misconceptions and things that people need to be more clear about, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, from my personal experience, it's a really difficult system. When my brother first started attempting suicide, it was like, the solution is call 911, right? That's like the solution. Have somebody come help. That's our help. But then that sends them to a 5150 hold, which they treat people, at least in my brother's experience, they treated him like he was, a drug addict. They're like, they kind of group everybody in the same kind of you know kind of grouping without actually treating it like a mental health disease. So I hear stories after he got out like this didn't help me at all, like this made me more depressed being treated like this. And so after a while, after a few attempts that he would do, we stopped calling 911 because of the stories that he told us. And instead of being upset and like being like, why would you do this? This is selfish, the kind of generic response when people are contemplating suicide, we kind of had to learn that the best response for him was to just like pour into him with love. And that was like the best kind of defense mechanism when he was starting to have like this suicidal ideation, not to make him feel guilty and to increase the stigma around depression and suicidal ideation, but instead to just be like, I love you so much. Like, how I feel about you. Like, you're so important, and just pour into those people. So, those are some of the things that I've learned personally on my journey. I've gone through, like, I feel like I've gone through all stages of the grief, like the first feeling of anger, the second feeling of being depressed myself because I felt guilty, having my own happiness when my brother was suffering so much. And then to a point where I was, mad, like, what are you doing? Like, if you don't want to be here type thing, like, well, I can't do anything about it. I've gone through all of those phases. And so now I've learned to just, again, pour into him and just shower him with love because that's like the best defense mechanism. But what I would say is, as far as like the systematic kind of resources, I feel like it's a thin line. It's like you have to be a certain age, you have to have certain qualifications, treatment's super expensive. And so, yeah, if you don't have a support system, it's very difficult.
Yeah, I think that's pretty extraordinary that your family was able to come together around your brother's illness, because what we often hear in the Black community is that this is not our problem, this is another community's problem. And it's typically looked at as, that's so and so's personality. It's not really looked at
Right.
as an illness. So your film is like a PSA in that way, as well, to educate. So I see where you've shown it, or at over 10 festivals, you've had such a great feedback. But I've also seen too where suicide is like on the rise among young Black people. So Do you think, how do you think there's been greater awareness overall? What kind of responses have you gotten from people at the festivals, maybe online, just wherever?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in our world, and I definitely feel like since the pandemic, the epidemic of suicide has definitely increased. So, I think that this film is super timely in that sense, but also also think people are just talking about it more. Whereas before, there's a lot of shame around suicide, especially around the family of feeling like, the first question is like, well, did you see any signs? And it's like, how loaded is that question of for a family that lost somebody to suicide is like as if they weren't paying attention, or as if like, they weren't, aware or they had some type of control where they could have stopped it. And so I definitely feel like people are more vulnerable and open to their experiences. But yeah, I mean, is when we went to film festivals and people would see the film, a lot of people in the audience came up to us and would say, "Oh my God, I see myself in Lamar's character of being the family member that's trying to, progress in their career while also dealing with all this other stuff with their family and trying to like financially provide for them." Or someone will say like, "Oh, I see myself in the mom's character of being a mom to losing somebody to suicide." And so we definitely have a universal story where we try to make sure that anybody can see themselves reflected.
How did you have the bravery and the courage to do this? Like, to do this film, to touch on such a personal, sensitive issue. Like, why was it important for you to make this film?
Yeah, it was kind of like over and over again getting these phone calls. I just got like I just was like, I need to put this out on paper or something because it was just like every single time I'd get a call from my mom, it was like traumatic. I was even if it's like, hey, just calling to check in with you, that phone call, meant something very heavy to me. So I would feel anxiety about getting calls from my family because I've gone through this residual trauma over and over and over again. And yeah, the time where I decided to write a script about it was based off of a phone call that I received. I got a call while I was on set. I was working as a camera operator and I was on my lunch break. My mom called me. I had 10 minutes left of my lunch and she was like, "Your brother is threatening to kill himself. He can't be found. I don't know where he is. We're looking for him." And I had to hang up the phone and go back to work and pretend like nothing was happening. And so, the next 6 hours, I'm just physically in one location, but mentally I'm all over the place thinking about like, will I know if my brother's alive? Is my family okay? Should I have left? And so it was really just once I got off of work, I called my family and he was okay. It was like all of this anxiety pent up. I had to like use this writing as a form of therapy to kind of deal with these emotions that I've been dealing with over the past 6 years. So that's where I found kind of like the strength to write about it. And then I have such a great support system of friends that I work with. And so I had that, that kind of support to be able to say, hey guys, this is something that I wrote. Let me know what you think. So,
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. The other thing that, comes to my mind is something that I've been noticing around the country. And I think we've had a couple of incidents, here in Detroit, is that they're really trying to get the police to become more sensitive to these, to this issue of mental illness because of the way, we've had so many issues of excessive force and just a lack of understanding. What are it sounds like your brother was lucky enough that he did not have any kind of situation like that, but what are your feelings about that? And what do you think the police, what are some things that you feel like the community and the police need to really get in terms of dealing with this?
yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that a lot of it has to do with the stigma, right? A lot of it has to do with fighting the stigma against, people that are suffering from depression or suicidal thoughts and letting go of the idea that this is a choice and that they're selfish and and having more kind of humility and empathy for people that are suffering. If police can be more empathetic in general to our Black and Brown communities and not just see them as a profile, but see them as actual humans, talk to them at their level, then I think that we'd get closer as a community to supporting each other.
So you guys have created your own production company, Royal, I forget
Royal
his,
Coalition, yeah.
yeah, Coalition. So, have you found that it was necessary to do that? Well, I mean, that's kind of a rhetorical question, but it was necessary to do that to get these kinds of stories out. Like, did you?
Yeah, 100%. We created Royal Coalition from the fact that myself and my business partner, we went to USC together. He's an amazing actor. I'm a DP, first time director writer, both in the film industry, but getting these jobs on big productions in, small roles. Like he would get work as an extra on, CSI or, The Rookie, like big ABC, Disney productions. And it's like, wow, you're amazing. You're on, a major production, but he'd be like a background or he'd have like two lines. And for me as a DP, I would get hired as like a production assistant where I'm like, so it's we created this company to create opportunities for people that look like us that we know there's a huge gap in our industry, right? A socioeconomic gap. And so we created this company in order to fulfill that need and to hire people that can do the job, but then also pay them according to the industry standard and not, not pay them like nothing. They should be paid accordingly. So that's why we created the company, and and that's the reason why we did it under our production company is because mental health, suicide is a hard pitch. Doing a short film is a hard pitch for people to invest in, and so we knew that this story was necessary. We knew that it was needed, but we didn't want to wait for a company to green light, the idea.
So as far as your creativity is concerned, I know you started out as a photographer and then you switched, to do film. Why? What was the real motivation for that?
Yeah, I switched because I did a documentary randomly in high school. It was like a crazy, 2 weeks to create something. And we got into a film festival, and it was I sat in the theater and watched people react to certain emotional beats that I created within the film. And it was just so amazing to see that through the power of filmmaking, you can evoke emotion, you could move people. And so I just fell in love because I already loved creating emotion or evoking emotion through imagery. But then when you combine that with, sound design and cinematography, there's so many elements that go into filmmaking. I just ran with that.
Okay. Are there any filmmakers that you admire, directors that, you've taken any cues from, inspired by?
Yeah, I mean, I love obviously like Ryan Coogler, what he's doing with just Black Panther, like his whole journey from Creed
Fruitvale
to Black
Station.
Panther. And
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. Just telling the stories of our community and showing them that they are marketable, that they can sell overseas. That's been such a great kind of role model for me. As far as like cinematographer, Bradford Young is like one of my favorite cinematographers. So those are kind of the two people that I admire, and definitely. Oh, and Ava DuVernay. She's like, I love her. I met her in
Sure.
person one day at a Cannes Film Festival, and she was so down to earth. It was like
That's
we just had a
aw-
casual conversation. It was great.
awesome. Another favorite. So, right now the film is in the Academy screening room to be voted on and whatnot. That's pretty exciting. With that being said, and being seen at the film festivals, what would be your definition of success for this film? Like, what would make you content? Like, I've done my job here. It's doing what it needs to do.
Yeah, honestly, it's a really good question. The definition of success for this film is knowing that people feel seen. And time again, from showing the film and each time that we've screened it across the country and outside of the United States, um, people have come up to me and told me how thankful and grateful they are that we've made this film, how they see themselves represented. And, we'll engage in a full conversation around mental health and the audience will engage in a conversation. So that's the biggest win for me is knowing that people feel something and they can start a conversation around this real issue in our society. It's also really great to know that my brother loved the film as well. His only critique was that he wished that it was longer. So that's like the best critique that you
Okay.
could get. Yeah.
Okay. And how is he doing? if I may ask?
He's doing amazing. He is doing incredible, and that's why it's such a surreal feeling to know, you know, at the time where this film was made, I was still dealing with this very real issue, and it was, you know, his depression was at its height, and now that we're here and we're, you know, contending for the Oscar, my brother's 2 weeks away from graduating college. He started school again. He's focused on the future, which would be a trigger word for him in the past. Now he's excited about the future, and that's the greatest gift.
That's awesome. So that was pretty much all the questions that I prepared. But I'll ask, you know, what is next for you in Royal Coalition, and you know, what's next?
Yeah, so what's next for Royal Coalition? We are currently in pre-production for another short film. It's called Lost in Words. It also deals with a neurotypical sibling and a non-neurotypical sibling, and how they have to find a form of communication during a loss. I wanted the film to be about kind of like society's expectations on how people should react when it comes to losing a loved one, and there's no real right way to respond to death. But how do you find common ground when, like, you know, one person doesn't communicate with words, the other person has other expectations? And so that's the next film that we're working on right now. I'm super excited about that. It's also based off of a personal kind of experience for myself, and yeah, we have a few scripts in the pipeline, so we're excited for 2023.
So for the people that'll see this, they can watch on the line on Vimeo, or how can they view it?
So right now, the film is not available online as we are working for distribution. So as soon as that information is available, we will definitely update you and your following. But the film is available for Academy members to watch and to vote for on the Academy screening room. So if you're an Academy member, watch on the line and vote for us.
Okay. And the other thing too is, I know there's a lot of creatives out there who are just like yourself looking to be heard. Can people submit scripts to Royal Coalition? Can they reach out?
Yeah, 100%. We are always looking to, again, uplift underrepresented creatives and to just get, you know, get work out there. So feel free to contact me and the company at Brianna at royalcoalition.com, Brianna at royalcoalition.com.
Okay, great. So is there anything else that you'd like to add as we wrap it up here?
The only other thing I'd like to add is that we are also working with a mental health organization because we really want to use this film as a vehicle to connect people with resources. So we're working with MPN, Minority Psychology Network. And so every single screening that we do, we have a mental health professional during the talkback in order to provide resources to the community. And so if anybody in the medical health professional field is interested as well in partnering with us, we are, you know, we're open to that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate you, and I appreciated the film, and I will be following what you guys do next. I think this is great, and I'm pretty sure the Academy is going to nominate you guys. They've got to. This is
Fingers
it.
crossed.
Yeah,
Right. We're like,
this
come
is a
on.
timely. Yeah, this is a timely piece. So
Yeah.
okay, well, that was pretty much it. But thank you again, and we'll be looking for, you know, the next project.